Welcome back. Today we are going to talk about the SIMGOT EG280. I would call this their first gaming set. It's probably just their first gaming IEM. I think the headphone was actually really pitched towards gamers, but this one I would say it's being branded as SIMGOT Gaming. So this one is kind of a full commitment to gaming. And we'll talk about what's a little bit unique about this and how it's similar to what other brands are doing in a second, but let's get a kind of a close-up look at it. The faceplate looks kind of similar if you're used to SIMGOT, kind of that teardrop-ish kind of shape that they've been using. On the side, it does say EG280. Kind of what is special about this particular set is right there. So there's a 10 millimeter dynamic driver on the right side, and that is a 6 millimeter planar over there on the left side. So a hybrid approach to a gaming set. I think planars for gaming is actually a good idea because they have really, really nice resolve. The dynamic driver gives you the low end. It gives you kind of flexibility in tuning and EQ. And I think that is where I would say we're going to jump off on, and why SIMGOT is taking this approach and why other brands are taking this approach. And before we do that, so it does come with something a little bit special. This is a 1.7 millimeter 1.7 meter cable. So an extra long cable length. I think that was a great move. But as I was saying, the kind of the bulk of what is special and what other brands are doing as well is actually right here. So this is a USB-C dongle, but it's really a DSP with PEQ. So what you're seeing from brands, kind of in the same, along the lines of the same that you're seeing with EG280, is that SIMGOT is taking this approach of providing a base kind of reference style, what their house tuning is on the tuning of the actual IEMs, but then giving you a lot of preset options for specific gaming or specific music. And this is the same approach that you're seeing with Tenjin, and the same approach that you're seeing with Moondrop. So everyone is maybe inching their way along the same path. It makes a lot more sense. Instead of trying to come up with one universal tuning for your IEMs, you can basically come up with an infinite number of presets or versions for different games, different styles of games. And this is just a model that works. So not too surprising that SIMGOT took this approach. So we'll talk about it, kind of along the lines of that and what that really means. So what is it? As I said, this one is a 10 millimeter dynamic driver with the 6 millimeter planar over there on the left. It does include the USB DAC with DSP. It does have this 1.7 meter cable. It is designed for mixed use gaming and music. And I'll say the stock tuning does lean more into games. It's slightly brighter, cleaner, which is what you want. And saying that a SIMGOT set is slightly brighter and cleaner should be no surprise to anyone. Their targets tend to follow the Harman tuning. This one is really no different. You just have kind of more of a bass shelf, which I think they've actually used before. But the upper mids and kind of the style of upper range is very much along the lines of what they've used before on the Harman target. So that's not too surprising. Also not that surprising if you raise the upper range. That tends to work really well for gaming as far as sharp imaging and being able to hear footsteps and sound effects. All those things that you need to hear tend to be kind of right there, and you bump that up a little bit and they make it easier to hear. So generally doesn't sound like a dynamic driver or a hybrid or a planar. And for me, I would say these two drivers in combination do kind of take on this hybrid approach. It is kind of more resolving, a little bit sharper than what you'd expect from a single dynamic driver. Does it sound like a full-blown 14 point something millimeter planar driver? I would say no. It actually sounds more along the lines of a DD plus balanced armature, but I do like the way this planar actually sounds. It doesn't really take on some of the planar timbre things that you get on the full size, but it still adds the resolve to the dynamic driver, what you want in a hybrid. So yeah, I would say it's definitely more like a hybrid, quite resolving like a planar, but close to a Harman style hybrid with default EQ. As I said, their house style tuning, whether it's a single dynamic driver or a hybrid, it tends to take on this Harman style tuning. That's kind of what you get here. It just sounds a little bit more resolving. So is it good for gaming? And the answer is kind of yes, but you're going to either need the SIMGOT control app, or Walkplay is another app that you can use to access the presets. And like other brands, SIMGOT is just making these game-specific presets as well as community-supported presets. This is going to be the way. This is the way that it is now, the way it is going to be in the future. You're always going to have this community contribution to what SIMGOT provides as sort of a base capability or a base, set of presets. You're going to see people take those, modify them for certain games, and we'll take a look at those, kind of where they are as of last night, at least, in a minute. So is EG280 a great platform for EQ? And I think yes. I think for those of you familiar with SIMGOT and what they do as far as driver selection and driver tuning, they tend to pick really, really nice drivers. No different here. It's a really nice dynamic driver. It is a nice planer. I don't know if it's the same planer they actually used before, but two very capable drivers, whether you want to use the bass impact for a rhythm game or you want that resolve of the planer for a first-person shooter. I think they actually picked two drivers which actually work really well, and you just have to pick a preset that kind of moves along the lines of what you want to do. But SIMGOT is kind of more so a music company. So is it good for music as well? Yes, but I expect to do some EQ sliding. There's kind of lots of presets to use as a starting point, but you really want to make this one your own. And I would say this is generally what I did with EQ, and kind of I'll show you that in a minute too as well in the Walkplay app. But my general advice is if you look at the stock tuning, which is actually here in the red, my general advice would be just kind of move the bass up or down. I think I moved the bass up in this particular case, which you can see in the blue, or you move the treble down, which is, you can kind of see that I kind of basically tilted the whole thing. So the bass got kicked up and the treble kicked down. And again, those of you familiar with SIMGOT, it'll be no surprise that, I moved the treble down. They tend to use kind of this Harman style, a little bit brighter style tuning. This one can handle even more bass. I think it actually is a more fun set, more musical set. The dynamic driver is quite nice. You can just bump up the bass. But I would say kind of avoid trying to do something with specific peaks and just kind of move the whole thing in a way. You can almost accomplish it with kind of a wall, but it's probably easier if you don't. It's probably easier if you just use some low Q values. And again, just kind of move the bass up or down, move the whole treble up or down. Don't necessarily get caught up in where the peaks are or what the peak values are. Just try to adjust it in a more general low Q style is what I would call it. So that was probably very loud, and I didn't intend to do that. But let's kind of get into kind of what this guy is and why this is a little bit special, and why you'll probably be seeing this lots and lots over the next year or two. So what you're going to get when you install this dongle on your PC or on your phone and pull up the Walkplay app, you'll actually see these are the music presets that you're going to get that SIMGOT provided. They're essentially going to pull them from the cloud, but you're going to get balanced, kind of hi-fi, first-person shooter, whatever that one says. I can't actually see. It says natural sound, ambient sound, AAA game, MOBA, and then kind of a music games. So these are translations of what they did. So they're maybe not quite perfect, but again, you're kind of seeing what this is 8 different presets that you're going to get with EG280, and some of these maybe work for you. Like this one is the actual default one, the one that actually ships with, or it's actually set to the dongle, and that one's kind of fine. And you can kind of see it's kind of what I did, right? They bumped the bass just a little bit, popped this up, but then put a little treble dip and then kind of raised the upper treble just slightly. But, that's not all that far from what I did. And then if you want to get into more game-specific things, kind of exactly what you were thinking that was going to happen, right? So if you want to get rid of, or you want to sharpen the soundstage and the imaging, you basically drop the sub bass down, bump up the treble in certain areas, and put a little dip there because that's going to be fatiguing. So not all that surprising that some of their presets make a lot of sense if you are just if you actually looked at other presets from other gaming sets. These will all be kind of recognizable. So I would say these are the 8 that kind of come as is with the dongle. When you kind of branch out into some of the community ones, you'll actually get some of the game specific ones. And some of these are going to be provided by SIMGO. Some of these are not going to be provided. These are going to be community provided. So this is the Walkplay app. So I use this on my PC. You say connect to device, you get Walkplay, it pulls up EG280, you get a PEQ sliders up there, you get a representation down here. But what you're kind of really interested in is on the right side. So the default ones, that's the ones that we just looked at, was those 8. The custom are the ones that you would do. And then the ones that are online, it's going to pull from the cloud and it's going to look for presets that match EG280. And you're going to see the ones that are going to match some specific games, Apex Legends, Valorant, Delta Operations. There's a whole list of them that are going to come up on the right side. And this one in particular I thought was actually pretty cool because it was tuned for footsteps. So they kind of flattened out and kind of really flattened out the treble because that's kind of fatiguing, and in the way flattened a little bit out on the sub bass because again that kind of clouds imaging, and then really poke in strategic peaks where they kind of considered where footsteps would be easier to capture or easier to hear. So again, this will make no sense for music, but for gaming you're going to see a lot of these presets that are tuned very specifically for specific games. And again, this is kind of the way that SIMGO is doing it. This is the way Tenjim is doing it. This is the way Moondrop is doing it. Just happens to be that SIMGO is doing this through the Walkplay application and using that infrastructure. But other brands are essentially doing the same thing, whether they're using Walkplay or not. So again, this is, if you're buying this kind of just to use it out of the box, kind of as is with the stock tuning, I would say that wasn't really the intention with this one. The intention was that you were really going to connect to either the SIMGO control app or use Walkplay and really access these for very specific gaming modes or for music. But so when I said I had my own kind of music version, it looked kind of like this as well. Again, not all that surprising. Those of you who are into SIMGO sets of the past, some of the previous sets, adding just a little bit of a bass shelf, doing kind of a gentle kind of push up of the bass, not all that surprising, doing a gentle kind of roll down of the treble. Again, this is kind of what you were seeing about right here, right? So this gentle push on the bass, this kind of whole wall down on the treble kind of looks like this in PEQ. So again, you would have, these are your defaults that you get along with the dongle. This will actually appear in the custom, and then you can save it, push it, and then it will magically appear in EQ as well. So again, those of you who aren't familiar with Walkplay, I've actually talked about that before, but it's just a general system that connects your dongle and actually lets you push EQ settings right here. So whether you're using it with your PC or your phone or some other device, the actual tuning is kind of stored here, and then you can access and change and modify on your PC or your phone, but then not have to be always connected to the application. And that's kind of the gist of how Walkplay works. So that is what I got on EG280. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.